there are paintings that look at us. Not metaphorically, but literally. Paintings in which the figure represented directs their eyes straight toward us, breaking the illusion that we are observing something from the outside and suddenly making us part of the scene. It is a technique that artists have used throughout history for different purposes, whether to create complicity or perhaps to unsettle the viewer. However, there is something very particular about paintings where the one breaking that fourth wall is none other than Lucifer. When it is the devil who looks you directly in the eyes, the question that arises is very different from any other. The painting you're looking at right now is called the Adversary, and it was painted in 1876 by the Scottish artist Sir Joseph Noel Paton. Paton is not a widely recognized artist in art history, but within the world of Victorian Scottish art, he is considered a fundamental figure. He was a personal friend of John Everett Millais, one of the founders of the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, and although Paton was invited to join the group, he turned down the offer. Not for lack of talent, but because he preferred to work on his own terms. Throughout his career, he painted scenes of Celtic folklore, religious allegories, and illustrations of Shakespeare and Goethe. He was a man of extraordinary culture, and that shows in every single one of his works. But the Adversary is different from anything he painted before or after. The full title of this painting is not simply The Adversary, it is The Adversary, where their worm dieth not and the fire is not quenched, a phrase taken directly from the Gospel of Mark, where Jesus describes hell itself. If we look carefully at the composition, the first thing we notice is the size of the painting. It is small, just 38 by 22 centimeters, and yet the presence of the figure within it is overwhelming. In it, we see Lucifer seated on a rock, his body leaning forward in a tense, predatory posture. His wings are spread out behind him like those of a vulture watching before it strikes. The background is dark and unrecognizable, and the only source of light seems to come from somewhere we cannot see, bathing the scene in a red glow that makes the figure look almost sculpted. Now, when we look down, we see that coiled around his body there is a serpent. In the biblical tradition, the serpent and the adversary are inseparable. It is the same creature that tempted Eve in the Garden of Eden, and the same one described in the book of Revelation as that ancient serpent who is the devil and Satan. Paton included this creature in the painting so that there would be no doubt about who we are looking at and what he is capable of doing. But what truly makes this image so striking is not the serpent, it is the gaze. Lucifer does not look downward, nor does he look toward the sky in a gesture of repentance. He looks directly at us, with aggression. One detail that very few people know about this work is that Paton used his own son, Frederick, as the model for this figure. The reason was that he felt the devil had to be beautiful if he wanted viewers to believe he was capable of tempting anyone. For the artist, evil could not be ugly. It had to be attractive. But as you may well know, The Adversary is not the only painting where Lucifer chooses to look directly at us. In fact, the decision to paint Lucifer breaking the fourth wall is one that several artists made throughout history, and it is no coincidence. There is a very specific reason, rooted in both biblical tradition and literature, why painters who wanted to depict Lucifer kept returning to this same solution. But before we continue, I would like to take a few seconds of this video to remind you that on our website, you can purchase any of the paintings you are seeing in this video. In our catalogue, you will find more than 900 carefully selected historical works so you can begin your own art collection and turn your home into your own personal museum. Shipping is free worldwide, and more than 1,000 people have already left their 5-star reviews on the website, sharing with all of us how they have decorated their homes with their favorite paintings. I will leave the link in the description so you can place your order once you finish watching this video. Now then, let's continue. The devil, by definition, is a figure that seduces, that tempts, that seeks out the human being, not the other way around. And this is documented from the oldest sources. In the book of Job, Satan does not appear as a monster attacking from the shadows, but as a presence that moves among men, that watches them and knows their weaknesses. In the first letter of Peter, he is described as a lion prowling around looking for someone to devour. John Milton understood this perfectly when he wrote Paradise Lost in 1667. His Satan is perhaps the most fascinating character in the entire work, precisely because Milton built him as someone capable of looking you in the eyes and making you doubt. Critics have been debating for centuries why Satan is so compelling to read, and the answer is that Milton constructed him that way deliberately, so that the reader would feel the temptation to sympathize with him and thus understand firsthand how dangerous evil is when it presents itself in an attractive form. The Fallen Angel by Alexandre Cabanel is another perfect example of this. Here Lucifer lies on the ground, freshly expelled from heaven, with a single tear running down his cheek. His body is beautiful, almost perfect, with a classical musculature that calls to mind a Greek hero more than a demon, and yet his eyes, filled with a contained fury, go directly toward us, the viewers observing him from the outside. What makes this image so powerful is precisely that contradiction. Cabanel was only 24 years old when he painted it, and he made a decision that no one had made so explicitly before in French painting, to depict the devil as a tragic figure, almost worthy of sympathy. When it was presented at the Paris Salon, critics were baffled. No one knew how to react to a Lucifer that generated compassion. It was the first time evil had been presented with an ambiguity so uncomfortable for the viewer. But that was precisely what Cabanel was looking for. When you think about it, a figure that repels us cannot tempt us. But a figure that moves us or makes us doubt, that one is dangerous. Franz von Stuck reached the same conclusion 40 years later in 1890 with his own Lucifer. This time, we do not see him drenched in the same beauty as in other paintings, but his gaze is far more penetrating than in any other version. Here we only see an enormous figure, seated in the darkness, staring at us as if he were planning his next move. The painting belongs to what historians call Stuck's dark monumental period, a phase in which the artist abandoned any attempt to make evil attractive or comprehensible, and chose instead to present it for exactly what it is. The only elements that shine throughout the entire composition are his eyes, and a small moon from which his wings seem to pull away. Everything else is darkness, and that is a very deliberate decision, as the work does not invite us to look at Lucifer's body, his wings, or the space around him. The artist forces us to remain trapped in that gaze and not escape it. Franz von Stuck himself declared in 1912 that in his paintings he sought to represent the purely human, that which is universally understandable, and that is precisely what makes his Lucifer so unsettling. He does not paint a supernatural and unreachable being, but something quite recognizable to all of us. Thank you for watching the video until the end. I would love for you to leave me in the comments what exact sensation these paintings gave you, and which of all the versions you saw in this video you find the most disturbing to look at. See you in the next video.